gosh, it's my favorite. It's my favorite ever. It's starting? Okay, I don't know what to do now because I don't know if I should launch into my next ridiculous thing. Okay. Are you I don't know what's happening now. Katie's getting ready. Okay, cool. She's getting ready. We are live now. Confirmed we are live now. Okay. You guys, if you have learned anything from the last however many minutes I've been standing here, it's that the 2,000 minutes that I've been standing here, it's that y'all don't need any qualifications to be up here, right? Do you have something to share with us? I am keeping on stalling. Cool. Oh, the hiring thing right now. Okay. So, this side of the, am I on the right? I'm over here. I have made it to the stage. So one of the things that we like to do at Full Stack is talk about hiring, and whatever the other job is for looking for a job. So if you are at a company that is hiring, we want to know about that. And if you are currently looking for a job, what's that word? If you are looking for a new job opportunity and would like to share that with us, if you're applying for a job, those are the informations that we want to know right now. So, is there anybody out here whose company is currently hiring for a dev in any way at all? Michael Chan, what is your company hiring for? Speak loud so everyone can hear you. Talk to Jeffrey Berg. Awesome. For anybody that is new here tonight, Jeffrey Berg owns Planning Center. We are in a Planning Center building. I work for him, so anything that I say is a direct reflection of his leadership over me. I am the voice of Planning Center. You're welcome. Okay. Okay, so we are hiring at Planning Center for Ruby on Rails and React developer. Is that the next word? Oh, good, I did it. I just did it. I'm so excited. Yeah, we're a happy bunch of people. I'm a happy bunch. I'm myself a happy bunch of people. So just imagine getting to work with this happy bunch of people. It's fantastic. Okay, is there anybody out here looking for a job? Is there anybody out here currently looking to change jobs, get into the field? James Miller. Listen, as the representative of Planning Center, you are not allowed to look for another job. You are stuck here forever, sir. That's not true. Okay, you guys. Yeah, James, please don't ever leave. I love you. Please don't ever leave. Okay. Okay, we're actually working. Okay, I'm supposed to do an introduction to my friend Katie. You guys. Okay. For sure, Aziz. I love this woman. Katie is one of my dearest friends, and I love her. This is her very first talk. Is that right? Yep. This is her very first talk. Fact checking! Yes!
I can't laugh with the mic on.
And I'm so excited. So, thank you guys for coming up here. One of the things that I want to say, and I forgot to say this in all of my rambling, is that we want to build community here, and you guys get to invest in that, and Katie has decided she's going to invest in you, not only in sharing this, but also investing in her own knowledge so that she has more things to share. So, also, high effing five. Good job, Katie. I don't know what she's talking about. I'm going to run away now.
Thanks, Dana. So, hi, my name is Katie. I work at Planning Center. I'm a developer here. I've been here for about 2.5 years. Pretty cool. Mostly decent people, mostly. No.
Tell us about the bad one. Tell us about the bad one.
I was going to say, they're all here. So tonight, I'm going to talk about 5 Ruby methods I didn't know I needed and maybe still don't. So Ruby gives us a ton of really cool, neat little things for free that I don't really know much about. So I thought that this would be fun to kind of dig in and learn things, and hopefully it'll be good for you guys too. Let's go. So my first one I'm going to talk about is chunk while. It's called on an enumerable, and it takes in two arguments, the current and previous elements, and compares them to decide when to start a group, specifically when the condition is no longer met. So if we look at the array that I have, it's just an array of random numbers. What I want is to group it by even numbers and odd numbers. So I call chunk while, and I pass it a conditional a even equals b even. So if we look at 1 and 5, comparing 1 and 5, 1 is not even, so it returns false, and then 5 is not even, so it returns false. Conditional is true, so we don't chunk. So we go on to 5 and 2. 5's odd, so it's false. 2's even, so it's true, and so the conditional is no longer even, and we chunk. And it goes like that throughout the array, and that's how we get our chunks. It has a sister method called slice when, which does pretty much the same thing, but they differ on how they decide when to chunk. So you can kind of hear it in the name, where slice when slices when the condition is true, chunk while continues to chunk while it's true. So if we did the same thing but with slice when, and we use the same conditional and wanted the same results, it would end horribly. So now we're using slice when on the same array. We're asking if A is even and B is even. So comparing 1 and 5 again, 1 is odd, 5 is odd. So that's true, and we slice then, because we're slicing on the true. And then we go to 5 and 2, 5's odd, 2's even, that's true, and we don't slice. So we get the exact opposite of what we wanted, which is less than ideal. So in order to get our groups of odd and groups of even numbers back, we'd have to say slice when A does not equal B even, which is confusing. Because what you really want is chunks of numbers that are all odd or all even, and throwing in a not in there makes it difficult to see that at first glance. So what I really like about chunk while is that you can be more honest about what you're really asking for, and 2 months down the line, when we're 2 beers in trying to decode or debug this, it's a little bit more clear what we really want to say. So do your future self a favor and say what you really mean. Use chunk while. And on to number 2, repeated permutation. So it is called on an array and takes an argument which determines the length of the permutations that are returned. And then it will return all possible permutations that can be made with those values. So if we look at the example, I have an array of 3 numbers, and I pass 2 into it. So array repeated permutation 2. I get back 9 permutations with 2 values in each. The amount of permutations you get back will be the original array length. So right now 3 raised to the nth power, which is 2. So in this case, 3 raised to the second power, or 3 squared, is 9. And you can imagine how quickly that would snowball out of hand. And repeated permutation is a close relative of permutation, combination, and repeated combination. I know, it's a lot of big words. So to kind of touch on them a little bit, combination doesn't care about the order of things. So right now we have a 1 and 2 and a 2 and 1. Combination wouldn't give you back the 2 and 1. It would only care about the 1 and 2. It also wouldn't let you repeat numbers. So the 1, 1, 2, 2, and 3, 3 would not be there for the combination. For the permutation, a little bit better, but not quite. So we don't care about order. We'd get 1, 2, and 2, 1. But we still can't have the 1, 1, 2, 2, and 3, 3. So then we get repeated combination. So same as combination, but we get back the 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3. But we still don't get the 2, 1, and 1, 2. And that's where repeated permutation comes in, and we get them all. So we get the 1, 1, 2, 2, and 1, 2, 2, 1, which is fun. So yeah. So kind of a little interesting, fun thing. If you call the original array, which has 3 numbers in it, if you call permutation 4, so you want a permutation of 4 with 3 numbers, and you can't repeat any numbers, you're going to get an empty array, because that's not possible. But if you did the same thing with repeated permutation and called 4, you'd get 81 different permutations back. Yay. Because why not? Okay, number 3. Now for member. So this one was interesting. When I was looking for the 5 methods I wanted to talk about, I wanted to do ones that I haven't used before and I haven't seen and were interesting. So I went through the docs and I saw member and I'm like, I have never seen this in my entire life. What is this? And I looked at it real quick and it seemed kind of interesting. I was like, sure, I'll throw that in the list. We'll look at it. We'll look at it. And as I was doing more research for all the other methods, I couldn't really find anything on member, like anywhere, which was real annoying. And I was like, I can't believe no one's ever talked about member ever, until I looked into the actual docs. And it's really similar to something that I use all the time. So I don't know if any of you guys use include, but I use it quite often. And it's kind of similar to what member does. So it looks through the array. It'll look through the array to see if the element is present. If it's true, if it is, it returns true. If it doesn't, find the element, it returns false. So literally exactly like include. If you dig down deeper, they're like really, really similar. So the only thing I could find that was different between member and include on array is that member was not redefined on array, so it's slightly less performant than include. So if you want a slightly less performant include, you can use member. You can use member. Just in case you were looking for that, I found it. Don't worry. Found it. Perfect. Okay. On to number 4, min-max. This one was one of my favorites. So I found min-max a while ago. I was on Code Wars. I don't know if you guys have heard of that, but I'm going to touch on it a little bit. But it's a bunch of different little coding challenges that you can do. I think they do 46 different languages, and the skill set is from very beginner, never looked at this language before, to senior, which is pretty cool, pretty widespread. And they're just little tiny challenges that you can do and just stretch your brain a little bit. But what I really love about Code Wars is that once you finish your challenge, you submit it, make all the tests pass, perfect, you can see how everyone else solved that problem. So, and you can sort all the solutions either by best practice or most clever, which is always a fun one, because then you find all the fun little methods like this that you never knew happened. So I was doing a Code Wars challenge. I had to find the min and max of an array. And I did some crazy loop and some unnecessary things, but it passed, ship it, it's fine, perfect, love it. And so I got to where I could see everyone else's code, and I went to the clever, and one person had just a 1-line array.min-max, and I'm like, you kidding me? It's really, yeah. So I was a little bit crushed, but then also I fell in love a little bit. So, so min-max is pretty straightforward. As long as all the elements in your array implement comparable, you can call it without a block. So just min-max and you're good to go. It'll return a 2-value array with the min and max elements. Min will be at 0, max will be at 1. If all of your elements don't implement comparable, you can pass it in a block and tell it how you want to decide which is min and which is max. Or you can use min-max by and pass the value you would like to compare, and it just does that for you straight away. So if we look at the example, I have an array of strings, and if I just call min-max, nothing else, it compares them alphabetically. So by is my min and high is my max. But if I wanted to compare them by length instead of alphabetically, I can just do array min-max by, pass it in length, and then I get high as my min and goodbye as my max. And if for whatever crazy reason I wanted the max in 0 spot and min in 1 spot, I just flip it with the block, and yeah, I get goodbye and high. So yeah, because why not? I can. All right, we made it. The last one. This one's a fun one. String unpack. So what is it? What does it do? Quite honestly, I'm still not 100% sure, but we're here, so we're going. So the formal definition is that when it's called on a string, which may contain binary data, it decodes it according to the format string, returning an array of each value extracted. Cool. It also has a sister method called pack that is called on an array and uses a format string to turn the elements back into a string. Cool. So if we look at the sample that I put up there, we have a string hi there, and I can call unpack and pass it in a capital B. That's binary most significant bit. And if I pass it in 1, I get the first most significant bit. If I want 2 of them, I can do B space B, and it'll space it out for me. If I do B, B, B without a space, I just get them all smushed. So whatever you would like. If you want all of them, you can just add an asterisk at the end, and you get all of them. If for some reason you wanted the first 4 in most significant bit and the last 4 in least significant bit, you can pass it capital B4 space lowercase b4, and you get that. So the format string is made up of directives, and there are 42 different ones you can choose from. 42. Why? I don't know. But you can mix all of those. If you wanted to mix a binary and a hex and whatever else there is, you are free to do so. Yeah. No lowercase z. No, none for you. And while unpack will always return an array of values, depending on what directive you use in your format string, the values in your array can be integers, floats, or strings. So it's real fun. So honestly, if you guys have any real-world use case for this, help me out, because I can't figure it out. I want to be able to use this, but I can't. The only thing I asked around, maybe if you were trying to do your own binary to hex to decimal converter, or you wanted to do your own encoding and decoding for fun, because things. But yeah, other than that, I got nothing. So if you think of something.
Like with interfacing like Raspberry Pi and hardware.
Oh, there you go. Thank you, Gio. Oh. God?
Raspberry Pi using hardware.
Oh, for a Raspberry Pi, using hardware, trying to manipulate everything like that. Yes. That's my mentor. But yeah. Those are my 5 methods that I decided to talk about. Also, Code Wars, check it out. It's really fun. And yeah, thanks for listening to me talk for like 12 minutes. Yay!
Thank you so much, Katie. Don't leave. I am going to embarrass you now. Okay. So as you know, yeah, you're just pretend this is just us girls talking, and we're like sharing a glass of whiskey, and I have one of my own. I'll
turn mine on.
Yeah, do it. So this is Katie's first talk. This is Katie. Oh, because there's a video. Nobody wants to see this. This is Katie's first talk, and she said she's been a developer for 2.5 years.
Yep.
Okay, so could you share with us a little bit about what you learned? No. A little bit about what you learned during the process of preparing for a talk.
Hated it all the way. Hate. No, it was a lot of fun. It stretched me and made me look at things that I would have never looked up. Like, why would I ever look up string unpack? Why would anyone ever look up that? But it's fun.
It improved her Googling skills.
Yeah.
Hey, all right. What developer doesn't want that? I actually don't know. But okay, so who would you recommend if they were considering doing a talk, or if they should or should not do a talk? Who would you say should and should not do a talk?
Well, because
at full stack in 1 month.
I did one, so I feel like everyone has to do one now. I'm pretty sure that's how that works. And that's what I was told. So
yes, if I'm allowed to stand up here and talk, literally all of you are qualified to do this. This is the point that we're trying to make. Yeah, you learned some things, you shared some things. I watched all of your heads nod during this whole talk, and I know all of you were like, huh, interesting. I never learned that. Probably also don't need it, but thanks so much, Katie, for all of your 12 years of prep for this. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to release you, and you do not have to stand here anymore, and I will not embarrass you anymore, but thank you, Katie, so much. Love this woman. Okay, if you guys have a chance to talk to her, she will run away from you because unless she has a drink in her hand, she doesn't want to talk to you. So if you want to talk to her, grab a beer for yourself, a whiskey. Yeah, that's my job. We bring balance to the world. Okay, so we are going to release for break. I don't know when we're coming back. Jeffrey, I need a time. It's 8:01. In 10 minutes at 8:11, come back here. There are bathrooms behind the stage right here. See that cute little bathroom sign that's going to be white in a minute that points that way? That's where the bathrooms are. The kitchen is there. Y'all already saw that. There are beers and drinks in the fridge. Please help yourselves, and we'll see you back in 10 minutes. You did it!
Sweet. Whoa. How do we turn it off?
And then we're going to run the rest of this cord down.
Test. Test. Cool. Live. Test, test.
All right, guys, we're going to get started again. Thank you for, I don't know, I was going to thank this guy, and then he looked away, and then I felt awkward about it. Okay, so if you are not on this side of the building, go ahead and make your way over here. We're going to get started with our friend Richard, who's going to be talking about continuous delivery is within reach. I just read that off his screen. I forgot to ask him what his talk was about. This is Richard. He and I met last week or last month. I keep saying week, and this is a problem with me. Geography and dates, don't ask me. But Richard came to our full stack meeting last month and decided to do a talk here. And if you guys did not notice, I'm big on plugging those talks because community is not built without your involvement. So we want to develop full stack. We want to invest in the community around us, and that includes all of us. We all have to do that. So thank you for your investment, sir. He told me not to introduce him because he had a slide. So now I'm just going to get off the stage.
It's fine. So glad to be back. I actually used to come to Full Stack, I think in 2000, like, long time ago, 2014. Anyway, are we good, sir? Can you please put that away, put it on silent? Whoever did it. Yeah. Okay, so I gave Jeff a list of topics, and he thought continuous delivery would be a good one. So I'm hoping it resonates with everybody here. This right now is my life. We at PSHAR are a continuous delivery shop, and we're headed towards continuous deployment. So who am I? I am Richard Clayton. I'm a principal software engineer at PSHAR. You can find me on Twitter. I like to talk shit about politics, so probably not a good place to find me. But I have my blog on Silverback, which I thought was going to be better than Medium when I bought it. Didn't really work out that way. And you can find me on GitHub. Okay. Yeah. It's because Art Clayton was taken by someone else, and I found out it was me, and I forgot my password. I shit you not. And I was like, you know what? I'm committed to this now, so it's my life. So anyway, my goals today are to provide a practical understanding of what continuous integration and continuous delivery is, and I'm going to demonstrate it through anecdote. So I'm going to give you an example of the development process with continuous delivery, and then we're going to discuss the principles of continuous delivery, like what it's all about and why we do it. And then I'm going to offer you some advice on how you can achieve it. So I know, to be honest, I don't think most companies actually are a full continuous deployment shop. So I think there's something to take away. And I'm still learning myself. So I'm hoping I can help you achieve the next level. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is these terms: continuous integration, continuous delivery, continuous deployment. Right? It is a terminology soup, right? A lot of times people get it confused. I actually got it confused when I sent the talk to Jeff, because I didn't realize that what I was trying to say was continuous deployment is within reach, not continuous delivery. But I sent the thing out, and I found out I was wrong. So continuous integration is actually fairly simple. It means that you can check in your code, and there's some other machine somewhere out there in the world that is building it and testing it and validating your code, right? To whatever level that you tell it to validate at. So it's not magic. If you write crappy code and you don't have good tests, it's not going to be highly validated. So continuous integration is about getting code off your box and testing it somewhere else. Continuous delivery is about packaging that code and shipping it to your production or staging systems, right? It's about deploying that code in an automated fashion. Doesn't mean that you're continuously deploying to production. It just means that there's some kind of facility in your environment to get it to your deployment environments. And then finally, the dream is continuous deployment. And that is when you commit code, it gets validated and it ends up in production without any human intervention. It doesn't mean that it's released. It just means that it's there. And there are techniques to turn off features, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So I wanted to start with a little anecdote. And the reason why I wanted to do this was I realized I spent a long time trying to figure out how to deliver these lessons, and I realized that what I struggled with at first with continuous deployment, continuous delivery, is that I didn't know what it looked like. And so I was constantly trying to get technology to do something that I didn't know was an actual process that had to actually be achieved through human behavior and not technology. So let's start with your daily development. So we begin our morning by pulling tasks off the backlog. And let's say hypothetically that I needed to implement Stripe like I did last week. So we're going to implement Stripe payments. And so, at some point, our team had groomed this task, and we came up with a checklist of items that had to get done. So the first thing we do is drag the task into progress. All right? Now, I know that I have to work in a code base to get this done. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that my code base is fresh. So I pull master, I make sure I'm using the right version of Node. I install any dependencies that someone else might have added. I build it, I test it, I run the linter against it. This is me verifying that the code that I'm going to start working on is in a working state. And then, usually if you're like, any kind of script kiddie, you're going to like automate this. With my good morning script, I usually do this and I go get coffee, and you get that little Mac noise. It's like, good morning, Richard, your coffee's done. So anyway, we began development, furiously coding. So in a continuously delivery environment, we're working on a feature here. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a release flag. All right, and we'll talk a little bit about what that is. The second thing is, all right, I'm going to modify the UI. I got to add Stripe payments. Right now, we only accept PayPal. So what I need to do is when I develop my front end, I need to turn this code off because I know it's going to get into production, and I don't want it to be on in production, but I do want it to be in production. And I know that's a conundrum, right? So I have a little bit of infrastructure that will basically look at flags that are set for that user, and if the flag is toggled, it'll show my Pay with Stripe. So you see that here with my Pay with Stripe. But my Pay with PayPal is obviously still on. Next thing I do, write a UI test, right? Then I go and I verify it and be like, all right, is it working? Looks good. All right, now I have to work on the back end. So, obviously this stuff doesn't live in isolation, and I got to keep track of the Stripe payments because of accounting. They're really picky about this kind of stuff. And so I got to create a migration for my payments table. I got to expand my model a little bit, right? So we use TypeScript. So here I'm like adding an enumeration and a field to represent that now we have multiple types in our system. And then I have to modify, we send flyers at PHR, so that's why you have this like flyers theme here. So I'm going to add the payment type to my database model. This is a migration. This is using Flyway, which is actually done in SQL. And then because our system's going to live in a state where I've deployed this code and there's a notion of Stripe, but it's not actually like in production, I have to account for the fact that now my database has changed and I have this model that has expanded, that is now there, but that I right now only support PayPal. So this is actually a migration that's called a recurring migration, which means every time migrations run, this gets ran again. And so this is a neat way to make sure that your database is constantly in sync. So this task that says basically if the payment type is null, set the payment type to PayPal is my way of handling a default case. So my production system now is going to keep up to date when these migrations run, even though my Stripe implementation isn't out yet. All right, and then I'm going to do some backend development. Now my post flyers route is, it's being used in production, and I'm going to add a whole bunch of new like Stripe stuff. So I don't want to break stuff in production, and this code's going to get there. So I have more infrastructure that does stuff where it changes like the default behavior, which is just post a flyer, and it adds an option where if a flag is set, that the user that calls that route is going to have this handler executed instead of the default handler. So here I'm accounting for the fact that there's two different implementations on the back end. Right? And I write my unit tests. I write some integration tests. And then I verify everything works. And then I push to master. Now, one thing that you didn't see is me branch. I don't need a branch. Branching's for suckers. All right, snack time. Okay, so in the meantime, while I'm getting my hot dog and petting my dog, the system is responding to these changes. So I push to master. That GitHub notifies CircleCI. I know a lot of people here use CircleCI. CircleCI is running my build pipeline. It's going to build my code. It's going to run my unit tests. It's going to package that code. It's going to push that code into a Docker registry, which is just how we deploy our apps. It's going to run my migrations against staging, and it's going to deploy my code. So literally every commit on master is going to staging. It's constantly going there. All right, and when it's done, I get a nice little message in Slack that says, hey, your stuff has been deployed to staging. Kauai is our staging. For some reason, someone had a Hawaii theme in mind, and that's what we're stuck with. So it's not a bad theme, but like, the annoying thing is we go and we add new environments, and Maui's our production environment, and we're like, we need to add a new one. And like the number of Hawaiian islands is getting finite. And then it's like Molokini, right? And like no one wants to type Molokini all the time, right? So anyway, and then everybody struggles to spell the environment names. Anyway, so, you know, when I'm done, we use Jira, but I didn't want to pollute our Jira stuff with a, you know, fake task. So apparently Jeff doesn't have a problem with that at Planning Center. Anyway, we drag it into Ready for QA. And I don't necessarily need to do this, but I'm going to be nice, and I'm going to tell Quality Man, which is our nickname for our QA guy, hey, this thing's ready to test. But he already knows it's ready to test because it's in his QA board. And so here he can look at it on his QA board and see, hey, I have this task that's ready for verification. And notice how I added like the release flag? And then he starts by saying, all right, I want to stage this release. So even though the code went to staging, it wasn't actually on in staging. And we do that because, you know, if you have a finite number of staging environments and you have a whole bunch of developers, you don't want to trample each other with features, right? And you want to keep you want to keep the deltas that the QA person has to test really low, right? So anyway, he's gonna say, all right, I'm ready to QA this. So this is literally in Slack, and he's like, all right, let's stage this flag. Now, staging the flag doesn't actually mean a deployment. It just means, hey, we're updating the database that says this is the code that's working, that's on, and our flagging infrastructure will tell the UI, okay, turn this on. So he does some testing, and he basically comes back and he says, yo, I really don't like the copy that you put on this. I want to change it. Instead of saying pay, I want to say pay with credit card. I don't know, it's pretty arbitrary, but let's pretend like that's a thing that he cares about. So I'm like, all right, cool. You know, I'm feeling fat and happy after my snack. I don't want to pull the environment down. I'm just going to edit it directly on GitHub, right? Because that's what us developers do, right? And so I do it. Right? Build failure. And I'm like, what? This should have worked, right? So I pull it down, and I look at it, and I go, oh my gosh. I started with a single quote and ended with a double quote. And GitHub didn't, GitHub didn't get that for me. It didn't like verify that for me or tell me not to commit. But my CI system did, right? Even though I can dangerously edit code and do stupid stuff on GitHub, it doesn't actually cause the staging environment to get updated. It doesn't cause any kind of damage to our running system, which is one of the tenets of CI. So anyway, I fix my malfunction, and I push it. Yay, it works, right? I tell Quality Man, all right, it's ready for you to QA again. He's like, cool. He verifies it. Yep, says pay with credit card. And then he's like, all right, I'm going to pre-release it, which basically means, all right, I'm saying that it's good, but it's not going to go out to production. And then he goes and plays video games. And then while he's playing video games, because he pre-released it, what that means in our system, and it can mean something different in other people's systems, but what happens is Slack gets his hook. Slack tells our flagging system, hey, change this to pre-release. Our flagging system will then like tag that commit on master of that repo, and that triggers a build in Circle CI. And Circle CI will then build, test, package, migrate, and deploy the code to production. So now, just from like that simple flow, without anybody touching anything else, this is not magic. We didn't like touch any other system, manually like push a deployment. This thing's in production, but it's off, right? So it's there. No one has to do anything. It's ready to be, basically released whenever we want to release it. So he drags a task into verified. He might even go into production system and verify that it's there, and then sometime in the near future, we will release the feature when we're ready. And typically this will happen because if your feature slices are really small, which they should be, you're typically not going to release just one feature. You'll release a batch of features because they're a coherent set, like they're like an epic of like capability that you want to release. And we're done. Yay. not with a talk, just with a deployment process. So he drags it over into released, and that's it. That's the flow for an entire task for a feature. Okay, so why do I provide this example? So there are a couple principles with continuous delivery, and I think this example maybe marginally demonstrates them. The first is that you have to build quality into your process, right? So we have unit tests, we have integration tests, we have linters, we have all these things that, like sometimes developers hate. They're there to build confidence in our code base to ensure that if we do something like dangerously commit through GitHub, we don't break the system. We always work in small batches. And our batches may actually be, like a feature might be implemented in multiple batches. So like you might expand and contract your database over multiple commits because you know that you can't change running code in one big deployment, right? The computers perform all the repetitive tasks. You didn't see any developers actually deploying code. You're constantly pursuing continuous improvements in your process, right? So what we saw was a pretty gnarly process actually in my mind, in that I'm like telling QA, hey, this feature's ready, because he should be getting notifications. And so one thing that we could do is we can improve it by removing some of the communication pieces and then having like the backlog drive the release. And finally, everybody's responsible. If you break the build, you're responsible for going in and fixing it. If you deploy code and we unflag it in production and it's bad, you're responsible for making sure that it gets fixed and it gets rolled out. So it's about developers taking responsibility for QA, being a part of design, doing things that are typically outside of what we traditionally think of as developer roles. And if you don't believe me that these are the principles, this is the link to Jez Humble's book on continuous delivery, which is like 500 pages. I do not recommend reading it. Unless you need a sleep aid, it's really boring. All right, roadmap to CD. So not too much longer, bear with me, it's like 4 slides. Okay, first thing you need to do to get to continuous deployment is you need to get your stuff building on another machine, right? And I know this sounds really dumb because given the fact that you guys are interested in technology and you're here today, I bet that you guys are using CI. But the number one thing that Jez Humble says in his book that people, like he encountered, and given the fact that it was like 5 years ago or 6 years ago that he wrote the book, so maybe things have changed, but a lot of people still aren't using version control, right? Like that's actually a thing. A lot of people don't build code by executing it off a CI machine or pushing it to a different machine to get it built. When you're building your stuff, report your build failures, right? And then you need to jump on it when it fails. Increasing your confidence through unit test coverage. So like not only doing unit tests, but actually checking your branches and making sure that you've actually caught all the edge cases in your code. Because when you get into the system, when you get into continuous delivery, you're shipping code, right? You're getting it out into staging, you're getting it out into production. And so you have to be confident when you actually do commit code that it's going to work. And then finally, reiterating the fact that you have to correct your builds immediately. All right, second step is automating deployments. You need to first start at packaging your code. Is your code portable across machines, or do you have to have a sysadmin come in and install dependencies to get it to work on your box? Docker is a great tool for getting this done. There are a myriad of other technologies to do it, but I think the point is make sure that you can actually package your code through an automated script and get it onto a remote machine. That's your model for deployment. Automate the configuration lifecycle. So one of the things that still trips us up is when people add configuration or the need for configuration, but no one ever does it in production. And so you get all of our failed deployments nowadays are because someone forgot to add an environment variable. So automating that piece is huge, right? So if one idea is if someone's going to set an environment variable for development, they also have to set it for staging in production. This is really dumb, but this tripped us up. Make sure that your app can start, in your CI tests. We've had cases where we've sent code to staging and the app didn't actually start. Wonderful. And we're troubleshooting the deployment, and it's oh yeah, because the app doesn't start. Automate your, first start by automating your deployments locally. So if you should be able to do whatever your CI machine does. So if you're struggling with automated deployments, do it first on your local box, right? If that involves like running Terraform or whatever, right? Do it locally, and then ship that script, ship those scripts over to your CI server or whatever system you're using. And finally, the script that you use in your local environment needs to be the one that you use in your CI environment. It's all about consistency in CI. Deploying automatically. So one thing that I really struggled with was adopting some pretty simple conventions on how and when to deploy. So I would ask yourselves, like, what in your system or your process triggers a deployment, right? Because a lot of times, it could just be a manual process, or it could be like waiting until product says go ahead and do it. For us, what we came to the conclusion was anything that goes onto master goes into staging. And then we gate our production deploys simply by tagging or merging onto a production branch. So this is really common, particularly if you get Flow, you're going to have a branch that represents your production system. And what you should do is just have your CI system deploy whenever you get commits to that branch. You're not to continuous deployment yet, so you may need to gate your production deployments. That's totally fine. And then finally, always work in small deltas, right? Because small code drift is typically the easiest way to guarantee a successful deployment. But if you're like literally working off a branch for 10 days and you decide you're going to merge it, chances are it's probably going to fail when it gets onto master. And then roll forward. So you see so one of the things that also tripped me up is trying to design a system for like automated rollbacks and like a blue-green system or whatever. And one of the things that we came to the conclusion of was that there are great tools like Kubernetes that will basically prevent a deployment if the liveness or the liveness probes or the readiness probes don't work. And you don't need to necessarily engineer some amazing system that like catches errors through smoke tests and does rollbacks. Start with something small where you just basically say, we're going to deploy it, and if it breaks, we're going to fix it, and then we're going to roll forward. We're not going to try to design a system that rolls back or goes to the last appropriate state. Because if you're making small changes, the chances are those changes are so small that an easy fix will get you back to a working state. And then finally, continuous deployment. You're going to have to get to flags or toggles. Does anybody use feature flags now? Yeah? Honestly, we do ghetto feature flags. We're working on a much better system, but like right now for our web apps, it's literally local state in the browser. So like we just basically say, hey, set this, this local session variable, and if you have it, turn the flag on. That's not great. You want to automate that piece, but the point is that you can get there very simply, like within a couple hours of work. You obviously want to increase, if you're going to go to full continuous deployment where every commit is going to production, you've got to increase your confidence with end-to-end testing and integration testing. Smoke tests, incredibly important. I think they're in the same line as integration testing. And then, if you have the time, invest in automated rollbacks. Okay, conclusion. I hope this provided some practical understanding of CI or CD. And I demonstrated how it would work in a hypothetical development environment. And hopefully you learned some of the principles of continuous delivery and you're thinking, oh, this is great. And I offered some okay advice on how to start incorporating it into your process immediately. All right, questions? No? Sure. So smoke test would be like it's a test to verify a rollout of a deployment, right? So like, or they'll call it like a canary test, right? Because canary in the coal mines, like they're the first to die before a human. So it might be a marginal set of tests that verify the liveness or the okayness of your deployment, but don't necessarily do a deep end-to-end test. So like, a perfect example of why you wouldn't want to do a deep end-to-end test against production is you don't want to like simulate a payment in production unless you can, right? And so you may be limited because you don't want to generate false data in your system with what you can do in production. So that they'll typically call a canary or a smoke test like that limited, like verify liveness kind of test.
Gotcha. So in the case of submitting payment,
Mm-hmm.
you might just kind of like make sure that the buttons that activate that form is there, maybe put a few inputs in there, like just make sure that it's there.
Totally, yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and if you get, so one of the things to add is if you get really sophisticated with feature flags are not just like, hey, is this feature on or not? It can be state that's specific to that flag. So one of the things that we're trying to do personally at PeachShar is we're going to roll out different keys based on what flag's on. So like you know how Stripe does like a sandbox key for like payments. So like if you're the QA person and you get into, you know, to testing the system, we can detect who you are and we can say, all right, for this you know, backend route, we're going to use the sandbox key for Stripe and not the production key. So we won't actually execute a payment. So you can get really creative with it. Cool. Yeah.
Sounds like you're going to have a lot of branching logic for all the feature flags and the special route for the QA. Are you going to have tests for that, or would that code itself cause problems?
It absolutely can cause problems. You know, and it's more reason to have like unit tests and integration tests that validate like that those work. And one reason why you verify in staging. But actually, one of the interesting things that I've seen, and we don't have it implemented, is to actually write lint rules for how long your feature flags stay in there, like stay in the system. So that's arbitrary, you know, it's arbitrary conditional logic in your system, and a feature flag shouldn't live more than, like, I think they say like a month. I think Martin Fowler's like a month is probably too long. Because the whole point of this is to be very agile and to be releasing features as fast as possible, validating them, and then turning them off, like turning off the conditional logic and swapping towards that implementation that you verified. And so like linting can help, particularly I can imagine like maybe you write a comment, you know, above it and you put like a timestamp. And like certain, like I'm not familiar with Ruby, like, but with like TS lint, it's really easy to write arbitrary lint rules. And so we might do something like that. Yeah. Anybody else? Just out of curiosity, how many people are doing CI versus yeah, let's just start with CI. CI? Continuous delivery? Anybody doing continuous deployment? You guys are? Yeah? Is that because you only code in production? Okay. I'm just imagining like Vim, and you're like just in the production system. And you're like, yeah, this is the. What's that? You do branch? Okay. Yeah.
A branch goes to staging. Anything merchant master goes to production.
Awesome.
All of our systems.
That's awesome. And I would ask too, like, how long did it take you to get to that? Yeah. That's actually a really great point too. The team has to decide to want to. The hardest thing that we had in getting to continuous delivery was getting people to get on board with it, because people are not comfortable with the fact that they're launching code out into, you know, staging and production pretty rapidly. And so I would ask, like, how much of an investment did you make in testing? Like, how did you build the confidence to get to continuous deployment? Are you confident now?
Every app's different.
Sure.
We had multiple apps. So
Okay.
for services, how long did it take, Tanner?
I mean, once it was available, I was like, do it.
Yeah.
I think the motivation for it was more, it was our hurdle for developers to have to think about deployments. And so the motivation was more, let's take that time, let's give that time back and make sure that it just happens.
Yeah. So now that you've hit it, like, let's imagine you start your next company. Is that the first thing that you do when you, like, as CTO, you try to get people to continuous deployment? Yeah. He has like no ambition. Just like, you will never leave this company. So for me, it's like there's for me there's like no going back. So at PeachShar, like when we started, so Mike and I started around. Mike started I think February, and I started April. Anyway, it was yeah. In engineering years, it was like 30 years ago. Yeah, last March. But I would say in our first 6 months of working, and we wrote a ton of code, we probably deployed 2 times. 2 times. We had this DevOps contractor that created this gnarly ass like ECS deployment system with Terraform, and it took like, honestly, it would take like 30 minutes for a deploy. And we were on the verge of getting rid of them, and we basically were like, we want Kubernetes, and we're gonna manage the whole like ops cycle of deployment. And in that first month of getting there, it wasn't pretty, but I think we deployed like 30 times. Today, we weren't even releasing. We were just syncing production because we hadn't released stuff in a while. We're not at continuous deployment yet. But today, we deployed 35 services, and it was under an hour. Actually, the funny thing is we were backed up on Circle CI because we didn't have enough build tasks, right? And not a single one failed. And I think the point is that like you can get to continuous delivery pretty fast, and you're going to build confidence in your process extremely fast. I don't sit up and worry at night about, my delivery system delivering code anymore. I used to. I've been on some government contracts where it was like the height of anxiety was deployment day, right? And like you're literally zipping up your jars, and you're like deploying it, you're SSHing and like SCPing them to machines, and it's absolute nightmare. Anyway, we're in a different place now, and you can get there. So I should wrap this up because I've probably taken way more than 20 minutes. If you are interested in this presentation, you can get there online. This is actually on a Git repo. I'm using this cool technology called Git Pitch, which is like, this is a markdown presentation. Yeah, if I can learn how to. And so you can, it literally just looks at the repo and it builds a presentation off of it. So anyway, yeah, it's there if you wanna pick it up. This guy who does Git Pitch is like a single guy in England, and he's making a go of it. So please, patronize his stuff. And if you have any questions for me, just find me afterwards. Cool. All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Richard. I wish I had any kind of questions to ask you, but all of this is way above my pay grade. I do have one question to ask you. Along the process of you deciding to make this talk, can you share with us something that you learned about yourself and the idea of teaching somebody something that you use in your professional environment that you brought to the table?
Never overestimate the amount of time you have to do a presentation. You have about a quarter of the time that you think you do. Yeah. I was literally in here like finishing up my last 3 slides. Yeah.
Thanks for encouraging our crowd. I love that.
But it's really easy. Come on. Come do it.
Fantastic. All right. So how many talks a year do you give?
It's been a while since I've done talks.
It's been a while, and look how good he did, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. All right, so thank you so much. You may leave. I will not embarrass you any further. Okay, again, my big plug for We're Building Community, that involves you, my friends. So my embarrassing question for the day is, if you were going to bring your BFF developer, so this is not your real BFF, this is your developer friend that's a BFF. Okay, you guys understand the difference? What would they talk about at Full Stack? Rick, I have not picked on you. So your BFF developer, what's their name? Micah. What would Micah talk about at a Full Stack? What would you encourage him to talk about? Arcane. Would the rest of us enjoy that? I would not. Could I read about that in Ready Player One? Because if that's yes, then cool, bring him. Bring him, tell him to do a talk. I want to meet that man. I want to hear his archaic development. I don't know what word you said. Okay, is that a talk you would want to hear? Okay, I love BFF's talks. Okay, Reed, I have not embarrassed you. Tell me about your developer friend BFF. Cryptocurrency. I know those words. Big fan. Because words. Okay, is that a talk you would enjoy to hear? Okay, so I don't know anything about that, and I don't know anything about that, but also these are just fun things to talk about. So thank you for sharing this. Okay, listen, guys. I love Full Stack. I love a reason to be out and about with all of you smarter than me people. I get to wear my fancy shoes. It's my favorite night of the month. It's fantastic. So if you guys are interested in giving a talk, please write us. Oh my gosh, you guys, I forgot to ask about the email address, and I am going to see if I can pull it from memory. talks@fullstacktalks.com. Oh. She just took the wind right out of my sails. It's both, but I didn't even know there were two options. So if you guys are interested in giving a talk, or you know somebody that wants to give a talk, we want to hear from them. Talk or talks at Full Stack Talks. I don't know what the rest of it is. Again, talks@fullstacktalks.com. I did it. Okay, 2 times in a row, kind of ish. But truly, I am going to stop embarrassing myself and get off the stage, but we really, really want to hear from you. If you guys are interested in anything, if you're interested in learning something and you want to push yourself forward and develop a talk so that you can learn more about it, this is a really great environment for that. Nobody's laughed off the stage. I'm the only embarrassment here, and that's fine. I wear that crown proudly. Anyway, thank you guys for coming. We talked about hiring. We talked about the drinks. We talked about the bathrooms, and now I'm done. I don't have to stall anymore. Okay, goodbye. Oh, no, wait. No, this is not my cult. That's your cult thing. Jeff is trying to turn Planning Center into a cult, and we do this thing after things. I'm not talking about that. Anyway, what I'm saying is we're hanging out here until what time are you kicking us out, Jeffrey? 9:15 or midnight. Whichever you guys choose, apparently. 9:15 or midnight. Okay. Thank you guys so much for coming. My name is Dana. If you would like me to say embarrassing things to you personally, please find me around the building. I'd be happy to embarrass myself in front of you. Good night.